He was my neighbor. And someone else's husband. I want you to think about something for a second. Have you ever felt seen by someone who had absolutely no right to make you feel that way? Not in a dramatic, movie kind of way. In a quiet, unsettling, real kind of way. That is exactly where this story begins. And I promise you, by the time we get to the end of it, you are going to feel something you did not expect to feel. Her name was Mara. She had just moved into the apartment complex on Celeste Drive after a divorce that left her hollowed out in ways she did not have words for yet. She was 34 years old. She had a job she was good at, a small balcony with a single potted plant she kept forgetting to water, and an overwhelming sense that she had stepped out of one life and had not yet figured out what the next one looked like. She was not looking for anything. That part matters. She was genuinely, completely not looking. He was across the courtyard, balcony directly opposite hers. His name was Daniel, and she found that out much later than you might think. For the first few weeks he was just a presence. A man who came out around 7 in the evening with a coffee mug, leaned against the railing, and looked out at the courtyard the way people do when they are tired, but not ready to go back inside. She barely noticed him at first, or she told herself she barely noticed him. Which is not the same thing at all. The first time their eyes actually met. It was a Tuesday. She had come out to check on the plant she kept neglecting, and she looked up, and he was already looking. He did not look away immediately, neither did she. It lasted maybe 3 seconds. And then they both went back to what they were doing. And Mara went inside and stood in her kitchen for a full minute trying to figure out why her heart was doing something strange. She noticed things after that. Not because she was watching him, she told herself, but because he was just there. He came out every evening around the same time. Sometimes he had the coffee. Sometimes he had a book he did not seem to actually read. He had the look of someone carrying something heavy that he had gotten so used to carrying that he almost forgot it was there. She recognized that look. She had been wearing it herself for most of the past year. The conversation started by accident. One evening her phone rang on the balcony and she laughed loudly at something her sister said, and when she hung up she looked across and he was smiling. Not at her, not exactly, but in her direction. She said out loud, without fully planning to, "Sorry about that." And he said, "Do not be." It was a good laugh. And that was it. That was the whole conversation. But she thought about it later that night more than she wanted to admit. It escalated slowly. That is the word she used when she talked about it afterward. Slowly. Like something that had been turning up the temperature so gradually that by the time you noticed it was hot, you had already been sitting in it for a long time. They started talking more. Across the courtyard at first, then he came down one evening when she was getting her mail and they talked for 20 minutes in the lobby, without either of them apparently noticing how long it had been. She found out his name. She found out he worked in architecture. She found out he had a dry, quiet sense of humor that surprised her every single time. She also found out about his wife. Her name was Claire. She had seen Claire before, actually, a woman with dark hair and a purposeful walk, who sometimes came out on the balcony with him on weekends. They did not seem to talk much when they were out there together. That was something Mara had observed. And then immediately told herself was none of her business. And it was not. It genuinely was not. But here is the thing about loneliness that people do not always understand. It does not make you reckless. It does not make you irresponsible. It does not make you into someone who ignores warning signs or pretends not to see what is right in front of them. What loneliness does is make you incredibly, painfully hungry for connection in the way that you have almost forgotten what it even feels like. And sometimes that hunger makes the most complicated situations feel, in specific unguarded moments, like exactly what you needed. The late-night conversations started in October. She would be out on the balcony later than usual, unable to sleep. And he would come out too. At first she thought it was coincidence, then she understood it was not. They talked about things people do not usually say out loud quickly. About feeling like you are living your life slightly off the beat from everyone around you. About the strange grief of a life that looks fine from the outside. About the distance that can open up between two people who live in the same house and share the same last name. She never asked him directly about his marriage. He never talked about it directly either. But it was always there, enormous and unspoken, taking up space in every conversation they had. She was not naive. She knew exactly what was happening. She knew what the warmth she felt when she heard his voice meant. She knew why she started putting on a better jacket before she went out in the evenings. She knew all of it, and she also knew something else. She knew that knowing something and doing the right thing about it are two entirely different skills, and that she had never been tested on the second one like this before. The moment everything shifted came on a Thursday night in November. It was cold, the kind of cold that makes the city feel quieter than usual, and they had been talking for almost 2 hours across the courtyard about nothing and everything. And he said, "I think about talking to you before I come out here. Like it is the thing I am actually looking forward to." And then he stopped, and the silence was enormous, and Mara understood that something had just been said that could not be unsaid. She did not respond the way a part of her wanted to. She did not say me too, even though it was true. Instead, she said something that cost her something real. She said, "Daniel, you have a life in there." And she tilted her head toward his apartment. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I know." And that was it. They said goodnight and went inside, and she sat on her couch in the dark for a while, feeling like she had both done the right thing and lost something at the same time. They still talked after that, but something had shifted into a different register. More careful, more honest in a different way. Like two people who had acknowledged the fire and chosen not to walk into it, but were still standing close enough to feel the heat. It was not simple. It did not resolve cleanly. Real things rarely do. What Mara told her sister about it months later was this. She said, "I do not think he was a bad person. I do not think I was either. I think we were both in pain and we recognized it in each other, and that recognition felt like something it was not. It felt like connection, and it was connection. But it was also a door that I could not walk through without becoming someone I did not want to be." That is the part of this story that I think stays with people. Because it is not a story about a villain. It is not a story about someone who did something terrible. It is a story about the terrifying ordinariness of how these situations actually happen. Not with dramatic music and obvious warning signs, but with coffee mugs on a balcony and quiet laughs and two people who were lonely at the same time in the same place. Though it is a story about the choice that nobody talks about. Not the big dramatic choice. The small daily choice to keep being who you decided you were going to be, even when it is inconvenient, even when it is lonely, even when the alternative is standing right across the courtyard looking at you like you are something worth seeing. Mara eventually moved. Not because of him, she insists. She says she had been planning to get a bigger place for a while. Maybe that is true. Probably it is partly true. She got a balcony in the new apartment too. A plant she actually remembers to water now, and she is doing by her own account, okay. Which sometimes is more than enough. If this story made you feel something, if it reminded you of something, if it made you think about the quiet, complicated places where real human feelings actually live, then share it with someone who would understand. And stay with me, because the next story starts in a way you will absolutely not see coming.